Cassie.
Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, creepy people.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
If you're new to our creepy corner of the world, this is P&W Haunts and Homicides, where we chat about true crime, the paranormal, and all things creepy in the Pacific Northwest.
We also do a tarot reading at the end of every episode for a little bit of deeper insight into our topic.
Mm-hmm.
So stick around if you're into that.
Yes, please.
Yes. Intensity. All right. This is, I'm guessing, going to be a very long episode because I have like 90 million pages of notes. So,
Pretty sure you said that on your last episode.
yeah, and it was kind of a long episode. Are you calling me a liar?
No, I'm just saying, why do you got to keep doing this to us?
I don't know. And it could have been so much worse because I was researching something else in the last couple of days. And even though I had a couple of things that were closer to completion, I thought, no. Let's start from scratch. And it turned out that was a big ball of yarn. I wasn't ready to unravel all of that.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So
Been
here
there.
we are. This was a case that was like comparatively about, the 80, 90-ish% done. So we're wrapping her up. I was wanting to switch up the order, and I like to kind of try to do different types of cases and just, give people a little variety. This is different than the last one that I did, and it is, well, I'll just tell you, shall I?
Is it still sad?
No, this one's so happy at the very end.
Okay.
So wait for it.
Yeah, wait for it.
Wait for it. Okay. Harvey Louis Carignan was born May 18th, 1927 in Fargo, North Dakota.
Oh, snap.
Beyond that, we're not going to dwell on his seemingly awful childhood much. Because, to be frank, including a bunch of his biographical data really eats into our time. And suffice to say, that's already so much to cover. There's so much to cover in this case.
I want to know more about Fargo.
No, I don't think you do.
Was it like the movie?
Well, it gets a little like Fargo, the movie.
Hey.
He's recounted bullying, physical and sexual abuse that occurred throughout his childhood. And while it might inform us about his psyche, it obviously isn't going to excuse a single one of the absolutely horrendous crimes that he committed throughout his life. Harvey has been known as the Hammer Man, the Hitcher, and the Want Ad Killer at various times. Exactly. That's the correct reaction.
I don't want the hammer man. It is not hammer time.
No, it is in fact never hammer time. But all of these aliases or monikers have one thing in common. They denote an evil, misogynistic, and particularly sadistic serial killer. We're not going chronological to start with. So hopefully everybody can get on board with moving around a little bit.
Where's that whiteboard?
I know, we need a whiteboard. In fact, we're going to start around the time that he should have probably been buying a sports car or whatever else men do when they're having a midlife crisis. Like have an affair or dating ridiculously young women, I guess.
Dyeing their mustaches.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, see, she gets it. I'm basing that on my extensive rom-com research, of course.
Yeah.
Everything that would piss Katherine Heigl off, essentially.
Ugh. Never do that.
Never do that. Anyway, we're starting off at a period of time when Harvey was already in his mid-40s. Rather than the gross aforementioned things that he could have done at the time, he was committing a heinous crime. One of many that he is known to or suspected to have committed, for which he would never receive a conviction.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so cheerful. In Seattle on Wednesday, May 2nd of 1973, single mother Mrs. Miller was concerned about her only child as the evening hours unfurled. Kathy was 15 years old, about to turn 16 in less than a month. She had a boyfriend and they had the most wholesome relationship. She was a good girl who had rarely, if ever, given her mother cause for concern. By 7 p.m., Kathy's mother began calling around to her friends to try to locate her daughter. The mother and daughter had a rare disagreement recently as Kathy had wanted to take on a summer job. She found an ad looking for a gas station attendant, which is not a job that I would feel comfortable taking myself as an adult woman, or certainly would not want my teenage daughter to have.
Yeah.
When Kathy called about the position, the man stated that he needed to fill the position ASAP.
Hmm.
Her mother wouldn't be able to make arrangements to take her to meet the man in person at the gas station for an interview and to fill out all the necessary paperwork right then and there, because that's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
The man offered to pick her up at an intersection nearby her home after school. But of course, Kathy's mother said, "Oh, hell no."
That's weird.
Yeah, that is weird. At the thought of their squabble, she began searching for the ad and quickly located it. She called the number listed for the gas station and inquired whether Kathy had in fact done this despite her disapproval.
Uh-oh.
Ooh. The man stated that he had driven to the agreed upon spot, but that Kathy never showed. So he took off after a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Totally a believable story. Like, what? When her mother speaks to Kathy's boyfriend, he is apprehensive as he knows that she wasn't supposed to take the appointment, but admits that he did wait with Kathy for the man to show up.
Oh, no.
Yep. He had a paper route, and after waiting a while for the pickup, he had to take off to begin his afternoon route, which I don't feel like you hear very much about people having an afternoon paper route.
Yeah, that's kind of
Isn't
weird.
that a morning thing?
Yeah, what kind of afternoon papers?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. That just struck me as like odd, but obviously it's true. And they're so wholesome. He's not lying about his paper route, but he told Kathy she should go back home. He's like, "I don't think this guy's showing up." But of course, when he left, she was still standing there waiting in hopes that the man would show up. Obviously, he's also now incredibly concerned about Kathy not having returned home yet.
Yeah.
So Kathy's mom calls Seattle PD to report her daughter missing. It wasn't well documented what action might have been taken in regards to the reported disappearance that evening, but they did at least accept the report.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that is something.
Did they say that she just ran away?
I don't think that, interestingly enough, this is one of those cases where I don't think we're going to get that line. Classic though it may be.
Yeah.
The next morning, the case is handed off to detectives Dwayne Holman and William Bowman. I don't know why William all of a sudden got real difficult there. William. They follow up with Mrs. Miller because they're concerned the situation seems suspicious as well, which I think probably had a lot to do with the details of like where she was more than likely going. The boyfriend confirmed. And obviously she hasn't come home overnight. So that's more concerning. They go out to the gas station to interview the man and are greeted by a man who is 6'2", around 200 pounds. And his name is Harvey Louis Carignan. He's the owner of the business. And It's a very successful local gas station. He employs a number of teenagers in the area, which, like, it was the 70s, but how are so many people, like, okay with their kids, like, working at gas station shops, you know? I don't know.
I don't know.
I can't I don't know. It was a simpler time.
Yeah.
It's a very successful gas station, though, like I said. Anne Rule, a famous true crime writer. Ever heard of her?
Maybe once.
Yeah. She described Harvey as a huge man with hands like hams.
Hands like hams?
Hams, like
Ham
as in
hands.
a ham, like a honey baked ham.
You have ham hands.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
A brow that resembled that of a latter-day Cro-Magnon man.
I don't know what that means.
I will show you some pictures later, and, stunningly accurate in at least one respect, for sure.
Huh.
So hopefully that paints a little bit of a picture for you. You're welcome.
Ham hands, for sure.
Ham hands, yeah.
Very descriptive.
Yeah, very big hands. Basically like my arch nemesis when it comes to hands.
You got some meaty mitts on him.
Yeah, meaty mitts. Oh, I like that. He tells officers that he had wanted to hire a teenage boy, but he'd been open to interviewing and hiring Kathy. He reiterated the same story that he'd told Kathy's mother. The man seems very obviously anxious in officers' presence. Aside from a stress sweat, he also appears agitated by some of their questions. There were no witnesses stating that they saw Kathy with this man, so there's nothing beyond their previously made plans to tie him to her disappearance specifically. So not a lot to go on, but they're like, my spidey senses,
Yeah.
Yeah. And a review of his criminal history does not take away from their suspicion.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Uh-oh, spaghetti-o. He had a record dating back to the late 1940s when he was in his early 20s, when he was enlisted in the Army. He was stationed at Fort Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska during this time. On July 31st, 1949, a woman named Laura Showalter, who was in her late 50s, was walking home from the theater. Sadly, she never made it. Hopefully, that was a really good movie that she saw that night.
I hope so.
When her body was discovered, it appeared that she had died as a result of several blows to her head.
Oh.
There was an eyewitness who'd stated he'd seen her in the very same spot where her body was discovered the next morning. Only that evening, she hadn't been alone. He said there was a man with her and they appeared to have been romantically or physically engaged.
Oh.
He didn't think much more of it, just assuming that the pair had been on a date.
Yeah.
I heard some different accounts that indicated that maybe he shouted at the guy hey, get get a room or something.
Yeah.
But doesn't appear that he intervened in any, significant way.
Right. And how would you know unless...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The witness was able to provide a general description of the man. So authorities now knew that he was a white man over 6 feet tall. Apparently that height would have been more remarkable back in the 70s. People are taller nowadays than they were back then, I guess. He was a soldier, likely in his early 20s, with mutton chops.
Ew.
So he's got meaty mitts and mutton chops.
Nice.
Yeah. The eyewitness was later able to identify the man in a lineup. Harvey Louis Carignan.
Oh.
However, beyond that, they didn't have much to be able to tie him to that crime. Still, I think, it's not nothing, right? He
Right.
did see this man with the woman who is now super not alive.
In the same place. Like,
Yes.
that's pretty good
I feel like that's
evidence.
significant.
Yeah.
It's pretty circumstantial maybe overall, but come on. Come on. Then on September 16th, 1949, there was the attempted sexual assault of a woman who is referred to alternately in source material as either Dorcas Callan or Christine Norton. This is where it got really weird. I wasn't able to determine why, but newspapers dating back to that time versus more modern source material gave different names. It's possible that the victim had wished to remain anonymous, and so an alias was adopted. In any case, this time the victim was able to escape her attacker, and she went to the police to report the assault. She told them that she was attacked by a drunken sailor. When she rejected the soldiers' off-putting advances, that's when the encounter becomes a violent attack. This second victim was able to identify him in a lineup in addition to the witness that placed Harvey with Laura at the scene of that crime, strengthening the case against Harvey.
Wow.
Yeah. So now we have a surviving witness.
Yeah.
Who was herself attacked. By December 1949, he was found guilty of the murder of his first victim, Laura Showalter, and was sentenced to death by hanging.
Jesus Christ. Whoa.
Yeah, Alaska did not fuck around. They did not suffer fools.
I guess I didn't realize that that was still a thing.
Yeah. That's,
that
a handful of years after World War II.
Yeah. I just think of it like, way back in the
Right.
Pilgrim days,
You're like, the 1800s.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
Yeah. An announcement was made that he was to be executed on the morning of March 3rd, 1950. Spoiler alert, he was not. Obviously, because we've already talked about one crime he committed well over 2 decades later. Just in case that got lost for anyone.
Maybe he's Jesus and he came back to life.
Yeah, we don't have the whiteboard. I'm just trying to help. The date, time, and location of his scheduled execution were all provided to the public, which I have some feelings and thoughts about, but we're not really here for that.
Still like public, like out in the town square.
I think a lot of executions were still done publicly. I think in many cases, we didn't see that really fully go away until, like, let's just say this. Our parents were alive.
Ugh.
Prior to sentencing, his defense counsel had requested a new trial. Of course, this request was denied by the judge, who in turn sentenced him to death. His defense had cited 11 different grounds for the request, including that he had been promised that he would not be put to death if he provided a confession. In 1951, he was granted a new trial on the grounds of his confession having been improperly obtained. Because they were like, no, we don't kill people that confess. And then they were like, just kidding. Switcheroo.
Can't do that, man.
No, you surely can't. Don't call me Shirley. The Supreme Court overturned his death sentence due to a violation of the McNabb rule, resulting in a sentence of 15 years.
From death to 15 years.
15 years. But then they did do something that felt like kind of on the level of harshness of death. He was then transferred to Alcatraz in 1952.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's funny. I just took the book down. I replaced it with another book.
That's right. Gosh, I noticed that. And I was like, she's got a new book.
Should I just put it back up?
I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah. From there, he would be paroled in 1960. after serving less than a decade of his 15-year sentence. So
Wow.
just about half of it.
I don't know how you go from death to that.
Death to 15 years, and then maybe you serve like 8.
Like, why? Where did the death thing go?
I mean, the death thing, when that they took that off the table because they did come about that sentence and the confession in a not super legal and ethical way. But
I mean, I get that, but like, what happened to life?
Yeah. I mean, it went from the death sentence to 15 years, then to, okay, just kidding. You can go now after 8.
You were just about to kill this dude forever and ever and ever, but then you let him out in 8 years.
Death is forever.
I don't.
Yeah. I'm not a fan. Following his parole, he moved to Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's several years later before Harvey is entangled in the legal system again. Like, not that many, actually, like, not any more years. It's literally in 1960.
Kind of like they should have kept him in prison.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, he immediately turns around and is like, JK, guys, I'm back. On August 5th, 1960, he was arrested for burglary, assault, and attempted rape. But this time, he's in his early 30s. So, now we're going chronologically.
Okay.
From here forward, mostly, I think. We really should have a whiteboard.
Yeah.
He was convicted of the charges, and through some sort of sorcery, I assume of the black magic varietal, he was sentenced to just 2.5 years.
Did they know that he was in jail before and like was about to be hung for murder? Or
I don't think so. I think that was part of the point of moving across the country.
They just
at that point in history, because jurisdictions didn't really have like shared records. There's no like database, you know what I mean?
Fuck? Google it.
Yeah, well, they weren't real big on Googling back then.
Man.
Nope. Yeah, so also 2.5 years, again, bringing your attention to the black magic that is burglary, assault, and attempted rape, and only being sentenced to 2.5 years. I don't follow.
Yeah.
He would serve 2,086 days in federal prison in Leavenworth, Kansas, which Leavenworth, I think, is you probably don't really want to hang out there, but
he's been some places, man.
Sure has. This man has seen the world, mostly just here in the States, and mostly prisons.
Prisons of the world.
Prisons of the United States. When he was again paroled, because of course he was, he then moved to Seattle.
Great.
Predictably, Harvey had hardly changed his ways. Made clear when he was sentenced to 15 years at the Walla Walla prison in Washington state for second-degree burglary.
Wow. 15 years for they got their sentencing all crazy.
It is all over the board.
It's all fucked up.
We need the whiteboard because it's all over the board. While incarcerated, he earned his GED and even took some college courses. Cassie, would you care to learn more about what he was learning?
Oh, I mean, do I have to?
Well, his courses included criminal psychology.
Of course they did.
Because of course. He was released on parole in 1968 after serving about 4 years.
Of the 15?
Of the 15. Yep. From there, he met Sheila Moran, quickly moving in with her and her daughter prior to the pair tying the knot.
Oh.
Though the marriage did not last, after he was jailed again in 1969 for another parole violation, Sheila divorced him. The filing cited physical abuse by her husband.
God, thank goodness, Sheila.
Is anyone surprised by this? You have no idea. Thank goodness, Sheila. Okay, I'm going to tell you. This is not something that I understand to have been included in the divorce filing. Um, it was a little unclear to me as to when exactly this story was shared and recorded for all of our posterity, but at one point in the marriage, he'd reportedly stated that he heard the voice of God telling him to attack Sheila with a hammer.
Dude.
He'd intended to kill her because that's what happens when you attack someone with a hammer. But the plan was thwarted when Harvey had a startling realization.
He's crazy?
Oh no, he's never going to come around to that one. No. In the very moment that he was poised to attack, it was actually his stepdaughter he had apparently been silently surveilling from downstairs in the basement, clutching his hammer in his ham hands. God hadn't intended for him to kill her. So thankfully, at least, this one awful plan was abandoned.
Okay.
So freaking bizarre and alarming.
So he said that he
was like about ready to go up the basement stairs, presumably, and attack who he assumed was his wife. But he realized all of a sudden, he's like, those footsteps sound really light.
Oh my God.
And he was like, because they're a child's.
Wow. Well, fuck, I'm glad he didn't decide to kill both of them.
Yeah, I don't think the mom was actually even there. I think he thought it was his wife coming home, but it just was the stepdaughter.
Wow.
So lucky, lucky girl that day.
Wow.
I'm gonna say.
And that he didn't like try to do it when the mom got home later, you know, like what made him just completely stop.
Yeah. There's a lot of there are a few situations where there's really not a lot of rhyme or reason. It just, I don't know. I'm the meme.
Yeah.
Of course, Harvey was not the type to be held down by time in the pen or failed relationships. Shortly after his release following the parole violation, as the 1960s came to an end, he met and married another woman. Her name was Alice Johnson, and she had 2 children, a boy and a girl, ages 11 and 14, respectively.
Oh, I'm worried about them all.
Yep. In the early 70s, it seems like he kept a slightly lower criminal profile. For a second. His main vice appeared to be speeding, but appearances aren't everything, of course. In October of 1972, Laura Leslie Brock of Bellingham went missing. When she was later discovered, she was completely nude, with the exception of navy socks, in the Oak Harbor area. Her cause of death was declared as multiple blows to her head.
I don't like it.
No, no one does. Laura had been a sophomore at Western Washington State College. She had been raped and had been beaten and bludgeoned with an unidentified object. At the boarding house where she was living, she'd left a note stating that she planned to visit the beach. Her grandmother confirmed that it was Laura's intention to hitchhike, despite her cautioning against it. She was traveling from Bellingham to the Olympic Peninsula. Harvey has never been charged in connection with Laura's murder. In fact, no one ever has. But he received a speeding ticket in the area during the period of time that she went missing.
Oh my God.
It's just like a casual 2 murders now that he's not officially been charged with. Just the 2.
But he was right there in the area.
Yeah, just hanging out, doing ham hand stuff.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and then there was the fact that there was a witness that stated they saw her get into a vehicle matching the description of Harvey's very unique camper truck. which
So,
we will come back to because it is so unique.
ugh.
Yeah.
So what's the problem? That's like he was there, someone saw him. Where's the lineup?
I mean,
Put that bitch in another lineup.
all that means is that she got into his truck, though, in theory. I mean,
Yeah.
again, you got to have some sort of evidence tying him not just to the victim, but to the crime itself.
Did they search the truck?
They're going to conduct a search of his truck. Not right now. Not right now. But they will. It will happen at some point.
After it's been cleaned?
Well, he does get it cleaned more than once, for sure.
Oh.
Yes. Anywho, we should get back to it. Now, we're right back to where we started with Kathy. It was May of 1973 when Kathy went missing. So, just to kind of wrap this up with a little bow here, October 72, that's when Laura goes missing and then her body is discovered. And then May of 1973 is when Kathy went missing. After a super legit job interview, and that's all there is to it.
Don't believe you.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Police informed Kathy's mother about the status of the investigation and their suspicions about the man who reportedly may have been the last person to see her daughter alive. Unfortunately, at this point, they don't have enough to arrest him. Really, they don't even have enough for a search warrant at this point, somehow.
Because no one saw him actually with her, or did they?
No, nobody did, really.
Yeah.
Not at that point.
Oh.
She then received a call from a man who said he discovered some school books in the parking lot of a business complex. He discovered that there was a name and phone number inside. He was attempting to return the books to the proper owner. So wholesome.
That's
So pure.
sweet.
When the books were turned over to the police, they attempted to lift fingerprints from them to try to drum up any possible new clues. Sadly, Kathy's body was discovered by two boys on a hike in the Tulalip Reservation north of Everett, Washington. She had been wrapped in visqueen plastic.
What is that?
Just like plastic wrap. It's kind of heavier duty. A lot of times people will put it down when they're doing various home improvement projects.
Okay.
So that's fun, I guess.
Oh.
You could say. Or don't. Don't say that. She'd been beaten with a heavy object, leaving large holes in her skull. Some of them were roughly nickel-sized. That's a lot of force. That's real bad.
Yeah.
It's not good. But that horrific discovery wasn't the only development in the case. A friend or acquaintance of Harvey's reached out to law enforcement to inform them that he had given some visqueen to Harvey. They asked for any of the roll that he still had in his possession to try to match the cut edges of that sample to the piece that was wrapped around Kathy's body. Little bit of a reach, probably, but hey.
But that's smart.
Yeah, I'll take what I can get. Following this discovery, despite there not being an obvious match, they are able to obtain a search warrant. Reportedly, witnesses saw a truck driving onto the reservation near the area where the body was discovered, and specifically on the date that Kathy went missing. Also, way more specifically, the vehicle was described as a Chevrolet camper truck. It was yellow with black stripes and a silver canopy.
What's with the black and yellow? DB Tuber, wasn't his raft
Oh,
like black and
yeah.
yellow too?
Yeah, it was.
It's with these like bright, obvious,
Yeah.
look at me, I'm
It's not
stupid.
great. It's not great because it's really attention getting. This was also, I know you'll be surprised to hear this, but it was a perfect match for Harvey's vehicle, but none of the witnesses were able to specifically identify the driver. So I guess our working theory is that now Harvey's very, very unique vehicle could have been stolen and driven by someone else.
Totally. Did he report it missing or stolen?
No, I don't think so.
I feel like he
No.
might miss that if it were gone.
I would think so. Yeah. Where's my bumblebee?
Yeah.
Kathy had never been fingerprinted. Unidentified prints were found inside his vehicle because, they did go ahead and give it a little search, just a little looky-loo. But unfortunately, they had no way to compare them to who they thought. So no fingerprints from Kathy. There are fingerprints in the truck, but they cannot
Why don't they have Kathy's fingerprints?
She just was never fingerprinted.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. And I think the condition of her body sadly did not make taking her fingerprints after her body was recovered possible.
That makes sense.
So thankfully, a comparison of dental records proved successful and they had a match. So they were like, yeah, this is super duper Kathy. They just couldn't match the prints that were in the truck to Kathy. So that wasn't super helpful.
Could they not like go to her room and take fingerprints and
I mean, I guess they could have tried that.
Come on, let's go back in time. Let's try to rework this situation.
Yeah, that would be so cool. From that point on, whenever possible, they surveilled Harvey, hoping that he might return to the scene where her body had been discovered. Which is not a bad theory because that's a thing that does happen frequently in these cases. But
he might know that because he studied criminal psychology. So, of course, he wouldn't go back.
I mean, yeah, he didn't that we know of, but it's possible. I don't know. I don't know his life beyond these 9+ pages. Harvey's family, meanwhile, is being interviewed by law enforcement in the months that followed. His stepson went to live with his father, reportedly due to physical abuse by Harvey. The stepdaughter didn't seem to like or feel comfortable with him.
Weird.
There may have been some accusations at one point or another about some sort of inappropriate behavior, but that was a bit murky. But she was still living with her mother and Harvey in their home while he's being investigated. But remember, she's about the same age as Kathy was at the time of her disappearance and murder. So, yuck.
That is so creepy.
Yeah. Too, you know? Ugh. It was June of 1973 when Mary Townsend was attacked while waiting at a bus stop. She had been knocked unconscious, but awoke in a strange man's vehicle. He tried to sexually assault her, but she leapt from a moving vehicle to escape him.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Bold move.
Like, not that I want you to have to do that, but
no,
God damn, you do anything to get out of that situation. Holy shit.
When you're between a rock and a hard place, jump out of the car.
Yes.
And you're like, when the car come into this? She had been a runaway at the time of her attack, and that's likely the reason, at least in part, why she didn't report it. Despite that fact, this attack has also been linked to Harvey.
Wow.
As for his wife, Alice, she was apparently trying to leave him around this same time because she's like, this situation is looking tenuous at best.
Get out.
She was not wrong. Yeah.
Man.
When she filed assault charges in July of 1973, it did allow police to pick him up, even if it wouldn't allow them to hold him for long. In September of 1973, he picked up 13-year-old hitchhiker Jerry Billings. He forced her to perform sexual acts on him while he assaulted her with a hammer. Surprisingly, Harvey released this traumatized child. She had survived, but would not speak of the horrifying incident until many months later.
Gosh, she's 13.
Yeah. And sometimes that's how trauma works. People don't always immediately flee the scene and go to the police.
Yeah.
Though that is a very good instinct. But sometimes, I mean, goddamn, that is what trauma can do. And she's not the first or the only. So.
And you said she was a runaway, or was that that was a previous
the previous
one?
Yeah.
Gosh, there's so many.
I know. And it's gonna get so much worse. By mid-1974, Harvey had given up on the idea of reconciling with his wife, Alice, and had begun dating another woman, Elaine Hunley.
Elaine, no.
Yeah, and honestly, how these two struck up a relationship is puzzling. Okay, this is so weird. Their meet cute came about when he found her on the side of the road after her car had broken down. So, I'm sorry, how does she end up being someone he carries on a relationship with and doesn't murder?
Yeah, because that seems to be his thing, like finding people on the road.
Very strange. But the pair ended up shacked up in Minnesota.
Again, Minnesota.
Yeah, back to Minnesota. Though law enforcement had been able to hold him at least temporarily due to other charges as they built a case against him for Kathy Sue Miller's murder, they weren't able to prevent his relocation. Harvey had sold the gas station and moved. As he'd made his way back to Minnesota, fleeing as he had become the number one person of interest in connection with Kathy's murder, he was said to have passed through California.
On his way to Minnesota from Washington?
Yeah. I'm glad you picked up on that because my next line doesn't seem like that's the most direct route, probably, but
I'm not that great with geography, but I feel like Minnesota's not down there.
Not in that direction. He's just taking the scenic route. Notably, during this period, the bodies of multiple young women were found in the area as he was passing through. Some of those cases remain unsolved because there were a lot of serial killers in the mid-70s in California, but he literally has speeding tickets in the area where some of these women were murdered. And I don't know. I'm just saying. Maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Why are you speeding? What you trying to get away from?
What you doing? Why? Why you gotta drive so fast? Because you went the wrong way and Minnesota's in the other direction? Or because the woman you just killed is in that direction? Maybe a little bit of both. When Elaine inevitably broke up with him, because
weird,
he's a piece of shit, it didn't take long for her to suddenly disappear.
No, Elaine.
Yeah. She left him August 9th of 1974, and it thankfully didn't take long for those closest to her to report her missing. They're like, weird how she's not showing up to anything, including her job. I wonder if we should be concerned about that. And they were like, yeah. You know what? We took a vote and we decided yes.
Someone check on Elaine. Is she okay?
She is super not okay. Her body was discovered just over a month after her disappearance. Her death was clearly a homicide. the beating she endured leading to her skull actually imploding. Horrifying. I had to read that several times over. I'm like, I'm sorry. Did you say implode? That is what?
Like every time you say something about the skull, I just go back to like the Lizzie Borden like
Yeah.
pictures of the parents' skulls and like
I this is one of those cases where I'm like, your skull's not supposed to do that. No. She was also raped with a foreign object, a tree branch,
no,
which is
why?
like, okay, a stick is it's all bad. It's real bad. A tree, a branch.
Men are so fucking gross.
Well, this man certainly. I mean, come on, let's be honest. There's he's not the only one, but I have no further. That's all I want to say on
I
that
hope he's
particular
getting
point.
sexually assaulted with a tree branch every single day in hell.
You know, it's funny you should say that because there is a very happy ending to this story that I feel like is sort of, it feels like poetic justice.
Good.
It's not like a tree branch, but you might argue possibly even more horrific. So something to look forward to.
Great.
Yay.
What page are you on?
7. Though each of his crimes have been incredibly brutal, it seems this marked a turning point. Or perhaps the better term might be escalation.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, carrying out such a horrific attack on his own partner rather than a stranger seemed to have Harvey, I would say, fully unhinged.
Yeah.
Because the following month, he would perpetrate an astonishing number of attacks, though some ended in markedly different ways compared to Elaine. So remember before when you said, there's just so many, it's happening so fast. Buckle up, Buttercup. Because holy shit, it is about to, it's Fast and Furious style. Like, it's like the 11th one.
I don't want to go fast.
I don't know. If you ain't first, you're last.
I want to be last.
I want to be last.
I'll be dead last.
Yeah.
I shouldn't. The wrong choice of words.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah. Okay. Any hoozle. In early September, 2 teenage girls named June and Lisa were offered $25 each by a man driving by to help him retrieve his son's vehicle from somewhere in the nearby area. Kind of vague, and they were like, $25. So they happily agreed.
No. Don't do anything for $25.
I feel like they're about to walk into a basement and like I'm screaming. I just threw popcorn everywhere.
But honestly, you should be able to take $25 from someone asking you to help them. Like there shouldn't be anything wrong with that.
But just to be clear, you super can't. Don't get in cars with strangers. Like the only safe way to do gig work is probably through something like Fiverr or TaskRabbit or something. You want your movements to be tracked. Eventually, they realized that they appeared to be going quite a bit further out of the way than he had described. When questioned about this, he reportedly asked the girls, and nothing can prepare you for this question, especially when you are traveling in a vehicle out of town with this man. He asked, would you rather be killed or would you rather be raped?
That's not a fun game of would you rather.
No, you're doing it wrong.
Doing it so wrong.
So wrong.
You're supposed to ask, like, would you rather eat a booger or like
swallow a bug?
Yeah.
Suck down a fart. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not weird. It's
not appropriate.
Well, they actually responded, which I wasn't expecting, but I feel like they just wanted to make their wishes known, I guess. One of the girls replied on both of their behalf, which also kind of presumptuous, okay? Stating that they would rather be killed. And turns out her friend agreed because she was like, yeah, pretty much.
Damn.
Yeah. When he finally stopped the vehicle, his instructions were that one of them was to stay in his truck while the other followed him to retrieve his son's vehicle. So he's picking up the story about how he got them out there in the first place. Like, I need help getting my son's car. And they're like, okay. Still, though, like, what choice do you have? So one of the girls accompanied him, following him into the woods. And she happened to be the one that he attacked with a hammer. But miraculously, somehow, she does survive. In a shocking twist, he apparently allows both girls to live and just drives away in his truck, which I feel like kind of downplays the fact that, like, he attacked her and, like, that he left them both essentially for dead.
So he did attack them both?
Unclear. I'm given to understand that it was just one of them that he physically attacked. It's fucking awful no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then something even weirder happens over the next few days. Multiple different young women come forward to the authorities to describe a man and his vehicle that had attacked them. What? Who could be responsible for that?
Is it the same vehicle?
Yeah, they're all describing the same dude and the same.
Is it the same one he had before, the black and yellow camper thing?
You know, that I think so. I don't think he even swapped out the vehicle.
Huh.
Yeah, which is wild. Wild. This is like Animal Planet level wild. Actually, the animals aren't even this wild.
Is this a speculative documentary? This isn't real, right? It's like the mermaids. It's not real.
Oh, it's unfortunately very real. Yeah. Okay. Then on September 14th, 1974, Gwen Burton is picked up from a Sears parking lot where she was apparently having car trouble. The man had told her he could help fix the issue with her car, and she had agreed, accepting the offer to ride along with him to pick up his tools, which is like, why do I need to go with you?
Yeah. I need help with my tools.
Yeah, I mean, I guess back then, I think especially you're just like, oh, this person's going to help me. Like, I'll just go along to keep him company. But like, he's a grown-ass man. He'll be all right. He was alone when you found him. Anywho, it was all not her fault, just saying, don't do it.
Right. Well, who knows? You said he had so many relationships. Maybe he was like super charming and like maybe she.
No. When I show you his picture, you're going to be like, yeah, I don't think it's not like a real Ted Bundy type of a vibe where it's like, oh, I could see how they were charmed.
Well, just because he's not cute doesn't mean he wasn't charming.
He's he's awkwardly unattractive.
Oh.
So I don't think that was it.
Why'd he get married so many times?
I mean, did you notice that both of the women that he had married had children that they likely needed help supporting?
That's true.
Not a dig against them at all. At that point in time, let's think about this. Okay, so women actually couldn't open their own bank account, couldn't have a credit card in their own name. You literally had to get your husband or your father to sign off on things like that for you up until I think it was 75.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so that's cool. She became suspicious after some time, seeing how far out of the way the man appeared to be taking her. She asked him to take her back to her vehicle or even just to let her out where they were. However, he refused and, of course, then attacked her. He began ripping at her clothing and choking her. He took her to a field where he then raped her with a hammer before beating her with it. Following this brutal attack, he He's like, bye, deuces. He flees the scene. He just leaves. Unbeknownst to him, Gwen is still alive and struggles away to try to get help. She would later identify Harvey in a lineup.
God.
Yeah. However, the brutality continued as Harvey picked up 2 additional young female hikers, Sally and Diane. The most wholesome names, and he forces them to do a not necessarily super wholesome thing. Yeah, just, casually. I can't even say it. I can't finish that
No.
sentence. It's horrific. He forced them to perform oral sex under the threat of violence because they weren't going to do it because he was so good looking. Again,
Right.
cannot overstate that. They were eventually able to escape when Harvey later made a stop for fuel. Cannot make this shit up. You might think that as more victims seemed to be escaping his oversized man hands, that his reign of terror must be coming to an end. Well, not quite yet, unfortunately. Though law enforcement from more than one state they were like, buddy, we're on to you. And also, don't call me buddy, pal, guy, friend.
Ugh.
It really sucks. Harvey was still on his brutal bullshit. So there's another disappearance in September of 1974. So September.
Wow.
So many horrible things. It's a rough time. You think back to school is rough. That's when Kathy Schultz went missing. Her brutally beaten body was discovered in a cornfield outside of Minneapolis. Her skull had imploded. Never gets easier to say that. Or this. And she too was raped by a foreign object. As if that wasn't bad enough, sadly, she had actually attended school with 2 of his very recent prior victims,
Oh my God.
Sally and Diane. In his hasty attempt to distance himself from this latest crime, he left tire imprints where he'd abandoned Kathy's body. When law enforcement searched Harvey's vehicle in Minnesota following the death of Elaine Hunley, remember, this is his ex-girlfriend, and he was like, if I can't have you, nobody will. And she was like, oh no, I imagine. They found maps of various states as well as a clump of hair made up of a composite of several different individuals, which is super gross.
He had a hair doll.
Not a hair doll. It was just like a clump of hair. I don't think he was trying to make a doll.
You don't know.
I don't know. I don't want to know.
That's creepy.
That's too much for me. The maps had several locations circled throughout multiple states. One of which was where Kathy Sue Miller was discovered in Washington, while yet another circled location was where Laura Leslie Brock had been found dead, also in Washington state. Kathy Sue Miller and Laura Leslie Brock had gone missing within just a few months of each other. And remember, he was a person of interest in Kathy's case before he fled to Minnesota. Thankfully, multiple victims that had escaped his clutches were all able to identify him.
Wow.
June, Lisa, Sally, and Diane all positively ID'd him as their attacker. Which is kind of a lot of witnesses.
Yeah, that seems pretty damn solid this time.
Yeah.
Maybe don't let him go this time.
Or just don't do any of this. Maybe don't.
Yeah.
You could. There will be consequences, but also maybe just don't. Maybe don't. When he was charged in relation to these crimes that he was believed to have committed in Minnesota, Harvey hired an attorney. He would go on to confess to multiple killings, though he claimed that God had instructed him to do these things, which is, I don't know, man. Like, God's kind of all over the place in the stories I've heard. Sometimes it's like, kill one of your kids. And then sometimes he's like, I'm trying to convince people not to cut babies in half. And it's really all over the board. Again, just another good reason for the whiteboard situation.
Yeah.
But I digress. So apparently we're going for the insanity defense.
I mean, he seems like legit. Something's going on in there.
I mean, there's
not right.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some things loose. I would say it's a little loosey goosey up there in the gray matter, perhaps. He was charged with attempted murder and aggravated sodomy, which he would have to go to trial for prior to any additional murder charges. Harvey was then sent to St. Peter's State Hospital for a pre-sentencing psychiatric examination, where he was diagnosed with a severe antisocial personality disorder. By mid-1975, things are kind of starting to fall in place in terms of the legal case against him. Harvey was found guilty in connection to multiple charges filed against him for the attacks on Jerry Billings and Gwen Burton. Because also, some of them, Gwen was like, that's super him right there in the lineup. I see him. It was that guy. So he was sentenced to 30 years for each, though he was only ordered to serve 40 of the 60 years that he was sentenced to in total. Not really sure why, but it really doesn't matter because next he was indicted on murder charges in the cases of Catherine Schultz and Eileen Hunley. Harvey pled guilty to the second-degree murder charge in the case of Catherine Schultz, receiving a 40-year sentence. He was found guilty of Eileen's murder as well, because duh. However, this first-degree charge carried a life sentence. There were Supreme Court shenanigans, but his conviction was upheld in 1978. And the next couple of decades were relatively uneventful until his prostate cancer diagnosis in the late 90s. I'm trying so hard not to smile with glee. Feels still somehow like maybe a little mean to... It's Harvey, the speeder.
No!
Anywho, he died in... You're not even going to believe this, Cassie. I had to quadruple check this. He died in March of 2023. Like...
That's last year.
A year and a half ago.
Wow.
At the ripe old age of 95, after serving nearly 5 decades behind bars for his crimes.
Good. I mean, he made up for lost time, I feel like.
But, like, that's also not to mention all the time that he served as a younger man.
Yeah.
But, like, almost 5 full decades for a handful of the crimes that, like, we know, like, dude did it. They didn't get him on everything. There are 2 murders that... It's like, again, I think we know, even if we don't, like, know, like, he did it.
Yeah.
Catherine Sue Miller, or I should say, Kathy Sue Miller and Laura Leslie Brock. Yeah. I mean, they were spotted in his vehicle, or his vehicle was spotted near where their bodies were found. Listen, I don't like to say, and normally I would, allegedly.
Right.
I cannot, you couldn't force me to give a single flying fuck.
He can't sue us.
He super did it. So, but just funny because, Not a tree branch, but something did literally climb up his ass and kill him.
Yeah. A little bit of cancer.
Super awesome. I don't know if it was actually the cancer that killed him. Most of what I
Old
could find
age.
out there basically said he died of natural causes. I don't what that is exactly. I don't know. He was diagnosed with cancer in the late 90s and then he lived for like 25 more years. So,
Man, I hope it was really painful.
yeah. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Am I right?
I hope he got no pain meds.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're big on doling out narcotics to
Yeah.
violent offenders, but what do I know? Hashtag not a doctor.
Well, I wish they would have fucking just hung him in the first place.
I know. I mean, just could have saved like potentially, I don't so many lives. So many lives and the
God.
trauma of so many young girls and women too.
He
Even the
literally
survivors.
like rampaged after.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, September was like a rough time. 1973 and then let me see. I think and then 74. Back to back like rough times, but September 74 is when it just like dude, you got to calm down. I need you to take several seats.
do you think he just like knew he was getting caught soon or maybe it was just his
I just
sickness was just
I
getting
just feel
worse?
like it's so classic. We just see this with so many serial killers where, and they talk about it in every, true crime series or, even fictional or not. Um everything that you watch about crime and they talk about how, escalation. And it's like I feel like at some point they just sort of get to a stage where they either think they can't like they're invincible, they can't get caught. There's sort of the myth that they want to get caught, but I think they just reach like a fever pitch. It just becomes a frenzy and they don't give a
Mhm.
shit what evidence they leave behind. They either think they can run forever or they just don't care.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
They're like,
He's a
catch
dumb,
me, don't. I'm gonna do my thing over
yeah.
here.
I'm just over here being a ham hand,
Ugh.
having son of a bitch. Me and my hammer for life.
So all the ones where you had said that they pass from like the blunt force trauma do they think it was all a hammer or different?
There were in some of the cases, it was clear that like some sort of a weapon or object was used, but there was indeed, I think it was the first murder where it was alarming because this woman was, I mean, completely unidentifiable. Like you could barely tell that she was human. Um, and the horrifying realization that they came to, and this was something that I didn't include, but now that you're asking.
Sorry.
No, it's they were a horrifying realization that came to them as, they were examining the body and everything. They realized, "Oh my god. We thought that this woman was like beaten about the head with an object and this was nope, just his ham hands. He did this with his bare hands." That was I believe Laura Showalter who was his first at least known victim when he was living in Alaska as an enlisted army man. Yeah,
He did that with his hands?
with his bare hands, with his hammy bare hands.
Well, I was also thinking too, a hammer isn't that big, you know?
No.
Unless it and if his hands are so it's like I don't know. It just
Yeah.
seems so like super intimate too because it's not like
Yeah.
something that you're swinging like that's
Yeah, the
it just
object
seems more
creates
yeah.
like not just a physical, but sort of like a psychological distance between you and the crime that you're committing. I would think. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
That
it's
makes
just
sense then
it's
if he
awful from every potential angle, from which you can examine it. So
yeah.
that's cool. Yeah. There's a lot of other source material that I looked at that talked about other cases a little bit more in depth that he was potentially involved in. Um, there was a case that I couldn't find substantiated really in anything that I was finding in terms of source material. I don't know if they changed the name of the woman that they were referring to, but I came across um, a relatively, I think, reputable source where they were referring to a victim that I was like, I can't find this person by name anywhere else. Um, and it was really bizarre because I was like, there's no other source material that seems to like have alternately named her like we saw with Dorcas versus Christine, depending on, the source material and at what point in time you're reviewing. I, I don't know. I have no idea where that person came from. It all sounds very much like Harvey, and it sounds like it played a very pivotal role in his downfall, but I couldn't find any information about it.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was, I mean, there's just so many victims and there's so many people that he suspected um, having to have either abducted, sexually assaulted, murdered. I mean, and again, some of those are unsolved. So it's like, okay, well, I don't know. Do we have anything that we can like test? Do we have anything that we could like, I don't know, run some DNA and
Yeah.
try to, I don't know, like crazy idea I had here, but what if we tried to solve it anyway?
I know, like just to know that things are
Yeah.
solved.
Yeah. I mean, because here's a crazy thought. Then it's like we know that he did it. And, I feel like probably somewhere out there, those people, you know, um, maybe they've remained unidentified officially for all these years, but more than likely that person has family, right? And they probably would like to know what
Yeah.
happened. Maybe we do it, for that. And maybe if it wasn't him, I don't know, maybe then we keep looking. We just
Yeah.
we just get wild and we figure out like was it maybe somebody else? Maybe they were younger than Harvey was at the time of the crime and maybe there's somebody else who's still living freely that like totally got away with murder and
Yeah.
everybody thinks Harvey did it. I don't know. Call me crazy. I just think we should solve the crimes.
Just solve all the
Just
crimes.
solve them.
It is hard though. I understand that
Yeah.
there are active
I know.
ones
I'm
that
not saying that
take
it's
priority, but
easy, but I
yeah.
do think, there's a lot of cases I think that we're kind of sitting on and it definitely has to do with budget.
I propose I have an idea.
Get it.
Let the podcasters do it. If no one needs to be convicted of
Is there an
anything,
at-home DNA kit?
just give us all of the information and let
us kind of
solve it for you, present it to you. You can double check our work, you know?
I think the issue is that a lot of these, it's like it comes down to that if we just took the time, if we used the resources, if we spent the money, that's probably the most critical piece, just to run, whatever DNA samples or other forensic evidence with more advanced, technology all these years
Yeah.
later, I think a lot of them could be solved, but those resources just are so often not available or they're
Yeah.
not allocated to that.
Maybe one day there will be no
Maybe.
crime left to solve, and then we'll just have to focus on
And
all
then
of the
all we'll have
past
to do,
ones.
all we'll have to do is, just not let Oregon rebound in terms of the backlog of rape kits again.
Yeah.
Like just happened because we have a backlog again, apparently.
Oh, God.
So like, great job, guys.
Oh.
Great job of that. I read that recently and I was like, I'm so angry. It gives me crazy eyes.
Just stop fucking raping people.
Yeah. What? Like it's hard?
Literally, it shouldn't be that
Yeah,
fucking
just
hard.
don't do it, That's so easy. It's so easy to just
Ugh.
not do the things that suck. I mean, from my perspective,
Yeah.
for what it's worth. All right. Well, now that we've talked about his butt cancer, should we do some tarot?
Let's do some tarot.
Tarot. Pick one. Oh, interesting. Okay. We drew the sun.
Oh.
We're using our tarot deck.
Do you want to know something really weird?
Yeah,
Did you
obviously.
see the shirt I had on?
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. I really didn't even notice. The sun.
And I
the
put it on and I was like,
moon.
oh, what if we got the sun card today?
That's weird.
Isn't that weird? But like totally doesn't have anything to do with your terrible case.
I mean, I guess we'll see. Okay. So our keywords are joy, success, enlightenment, marriage, and vitality. Associated with obviously the sun, fire, the numbers 1 and 10. Okay. I'm gonna.
Are we gonna set it out on the altar?
Yes. Okay. So the keywords in our big book are essentially the same, so I'm not going to reiterate them. The sun card features a blazing sun, sometimes with a face, sunbeams radiating out from it. Beneath the sun in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, a smiling nude child rides a white horse. Some decks show two children with their arms around each other. Other decks picture a young couple holding hands. The sun rules the zodiac sign Leo, which astrologers link with children, pleasure, and creativity. Alrighty. The sun card represents life itself, for the sun gives life to everything on earth. Interesting. One of the most joyful cards in the tarot, it signifies vitality, confidence, achievement, attainment, and success in all endeavors. Okay. I feel like maybe in the interpretation here, we might get a sense of who this is for, or maybe why we're this is such a strange card to draw for this, but I feel like maybe it's starting to make sense for me a little bit. The sun brightens any negative cards in a reading, no matter where it appears in the spread. Its influence is always beneficial. A new day is dawning and you're glad to be alive. Whatever your question, the answer is positive. For creative people, the sun can indicate a time of increased inspiration and productivity. Whatever you undertake at this time is likely to prosper, for the sun is shining on you. This is a good time to start new projects and expand your horizons. It's your day in the sun.
Just makes me sad because it's like the opposite of like he took all of those women's sun, their light, their life away.
Yeah, I totally agree. It really does. I feel like the points in each of the bullets, they don't necessarily feel like they really add anything that gives me greater perspective on this. I feel like this is for the girls that lived.
You know what? That's interesting you say that, because I was just thinking, well, that's who I was thinking of when he didn't even cross my mind while I was shuffling, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of all of the women. So that is interesting, though.
I do think that's the energy that, I mean, maybe even unintentionally, that we were kind of putting into the deck. And I'm okay with it. I would
Do we
rather...
want to try to draw another one and just see what pops up?
Yeah.
Do we need to? I feel like I need to touch it again. And
Yeah.
like, because I wasn't thinking of him.
Okay. I don't know that you have to think of him, to be quite honest.
Well, I just want
But just to get a little bit of, yeah, I don't know.
something.
I'm a little bit torn because I do think that like it's such a positive reading, and I think that's the takeaway I want.
But it also was kind of like goes back to the beginning where you're like, well, it does end on, the happiest note that it could possibly end on. Like
Yeah.
he's dead. So
Yeah.
he's no longer
Honestly, it makes
able
me
to see the sun.
so happy that he lived such a long life.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of these guys will get caught, especially when they're already, like he was already in his like late 40s, I think, when, he was put away. And so it's like he could have very easily died a relatively young man. That's not unusual for people that are incarcerated for their lifespans to be terribly cut short, which I say terribly because I think in a lot of instances, people, if they are wrongfully convicted or they're put away for decades for something stupid like, smoking a little bit of weed over, that kind of stuff pisses me off because the treatment that people receive in prison is not ideal. It's not the ideal environment for you to grow and live a long and healthy life.
Yeah. But for this particular person,
he's a fucking weed. He grew through the cracks. Okay.
And I hope he didn't get to see a lot of the sun,
I'm sure he didn't. I mean, he couldn't have. Okay. Okie dokie. Well, having that conversation, I think set us on the right path for something more in line with Harvey. That'll do it. Okay.
I also love that you said okie dokie. Just reminds me of like Fargo.
Yeah. You're like, that's the Midwest.
Yeah.
There she is. Okay, so we drew the King of Cups in reverse. Our keywords would normally be wisdom, understanding, focus, balance, and peacefulness in the upright position. However, when you draw it in the reverse, our keywords are coldness, volatile, immature, overreaction, and manipulative, which there are so many aspects of this case that like I can't even really delve into how relevant some of these are because they're just not things that I chose to dive deep on. Really wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to discuss his ass cancer at the end.
Yeah.
So,
but overreaction is like, sorry, what did you say?
Oh, I said as one does.
As one does.
As one does.
Overreaction reminds me of like overkill.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Oof. Okay. So numerology, we've got numbers 14 and 5. This card is also associated with the astrological signs Pisces, Scorpio, and Cancer. I am almost positive that he was a Taurus. May 18th.
Tauruses for me, they're my favorite.
Yeah, that is a Taurus. Yeah. Hey, listen, you know what? My grandpa was a Taurus. And he grew up kind of in the same era as this guy. So I don't love it either, but
I mean, it kind of made sense. He never stopped. Not even jail could stop him.
Never stopping.
Very headstrong.
Yeah, really. This card is also associated with water, which is interesting because there aren't really any water elements associated with this case that I can think of, really.
Just because cups and like water is like emotions and
lots of emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you want me to stick it in?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so King of Cups in reverse. Don't burn yourself. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is interesting. We do have slightly different keywords in the big book.
Oh, okay.
So these are obviously more intended toward the upright position, but I think it's interesting. Benevolence, culture, creativity, emotional warmth, and protection. And we drew this.
Yeah, in the
So it's
reverse.
literally all things opposite, kind of.
Did they not give keywords for the reverse interpretation?
Not necessarily.
Oh.
No.
I don't know why I always thought that they did.
Yeah, the reverse interpretation definitely does. It touches on how the placement of the card, how the meaning is different, but it doesn't specifically identify different keywords. Because the keywords in theory are the same. It's just sort of like the other side of a coin in a way.
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Not
Yeah.
necessarily directly opposite. In this case, it works for me that it's like
This
for
case
sure
it is.
opposite. Yeah.
Like also judging from the keywords on the tutorial.
Yeah. Okay, so this is interesting. In many decks, this king sits on a throne and wears rich garments and a crown. He usually appears as a benevolent authority, a father figure. Which I think it goes without saying that Harvey didn't have a really healthy modeling of what that might look like.
Right. He was a father figure, not a good one.
Yeah. No, and he didn't have that behavior modeled to him either. So it says, who rules kindly and fairly, which is definitely also, again, didn't go into the childhood nearly enough to elaborate how accurate that is. In a reading, the King of Cups may signify an actual person. When he does, it's generally a mature man who's cultured and knowledgeable in the arts, which could not be further from the case.
He studied criminal psychology.
Yeah, there is that.
He's very cultured and artistic.
It's funny because as soon as I said it, I was like, well, he did.
In prison.
Yeah. Okay. This is when we really, really, really get to the crux of Harvey, I think.
Is this where we get to the meaty mitts of
the
the situation?
ham hand of it all? Yeah. The reversed king shows emotional turmoil, insecurity, and defensiveness.
Insecurity. I like the whole raping people with foreign objects.
It's all
just
about
screams.
Yeah.
Insecurity.
It's a power move. It's just everything that's ick. Ugh. If he represents a real person, he can be manipulative, emotionally controlling, and vindictive. And boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Check, check, check.
This card suggests dissatisfaction and frustration. Perhaps because you aren't using your creativity. Because you could have used your creativity to take a bad situation at so many different points in your life and figure out a way to creatively solve problems and make your life better. But you didn't.
But you didn't. But how much of that was like his choice and like his mental illness, you know? Like if he had maybe support for his mental illness.
He was not entirely without support, really.
It was so long ago though. Like they don't have like the medications that they do now. And
things are very different. I do think that there's a lot of very clear indication that there are absolutely just like horrific choices being made, horrendous decision making. And that is kind of the crux of like, you know, he's just the recidivism alone, just constantly being incarcerated and the parole violations and all of that. It's just, I mean, come on, that's a choice. That's a choice.
But
in
God
his
was
case.
telling him to kill people.
Right. You know, so that's, I mean, that's
obviously I'm not excusing him. Like I'm just,
I know.
It's part of the story though. Like
it is.
If things had been different, if there was better medication, I just wonder like what would have been different?
I don't know how they would medicate for something like a severe social personality disorder.
Like he had to have had like schizophrenia or something if he's hearing God tell him to kill people.
I think that a lot of my resources kind of indicate like that was just something that I think most people just believe that's something he said.
Oh.
I don't think that was I don't think that was real.
Hmm.
I don't think that was real. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, he did mention more than once, how God told him things and said, do this, do unto God. And
it just
blah,
like
blah,
screams schizophrenia to me, like people in your head telling you to do things.
I mean, and that's fair. I could see how
But also he
mean,
studied criminal psychology. So was he just making it up? Who knows?
And that's the thing is like, I struggle with like, okay, how much of this is real?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
Nobody knows.
No, but and you know what? Fortunately, we don't ever have to find out, really. Okay. Oh, shit. Okay. Tara's here to back me up. In a reading about money, the reversed king can show losses resulting from decisions made emotionally rather than rationally. Just hello.
Not a lot of rational thought there.
Nope, not a lot. Sometimes it indicates laziness, lack of direction, or an indulgent nature that lands you in debt.
Ooh, like indulgent.
Indulgent, yeah. If the reading is about your job, this card suggests territorialism and power struggles, which is, yeah.
If I can't have you, nobody can.
That's kind of immediately where my head goes. Okay. You may fear losing ground and try to control others. Absolutely. Secrecy, duplicity, and manipulation may exist in your workplace or just like wherever you go.
It's so interesting. You said he afraid of losing ground. Is that why he was speeding constantly?
I mean, that could be. And ironically, then he left tire tracks in the ground.
In the ground. Yeah.
He did lose ground. He lost like little bits of some, and they were in like these neat little lines that represented his specific vehicle. In a question about love, the reversed king can mean fear of expressing love and caring. Jealousy, defensiveness, and/or emotional outbursts may cause problems. Perhaps you feel insecure in a partnership. Wow.
Just insecure man all around.
Yeah, a lot of incel energy. Yeah. I mean, let's face it, a lot of serial killers really do represent like this. It's a real strong incel vibe in that crowd.
Yeah.
Yucky.
Well, thanks for telling us about another one. Appreciate you.
You're so welcome. I'm really excited to share with you guys another case. And it's interesting because there are sort of some parallels, mainly geographically and some things like that. But
California?
California doesn't specifically make another appearance. Washington, yeah, in a way. Yeah.
Minnesota?
Not Minnesota, but the Midwest.
I'm just guessing all the places you talked about today and just naming them off one by one.
Yeah, I mean, the big one would be, you know what? No, I'm not going to say it.
No, don't say it. I'm not
going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
We got one more. Hold on. Okay. Right at the freaking end. I'm just going to clap because I put my thing down.
Clap!
Well, is that it? Are we done? Are you done torturing us for today?
Listen, you asked for this.
Did I?
And she's like, I don't remember that.
I specifically remember actually asking for not this, the exact opposite of this.
Come on. No, I mean this was a tough one.
Yeah. So many women. Oh my gosh.
So many women, and I mean young girls.
Yeah.
It's really heartbreaking. But the good news is that I will totally pick something lighter next.
All right.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I'm wild. Obviously, I thought up until basically today I was doing a completely different case. And I was like, holy shit, I bit off more than I can chew with my ham hands.
Ew.
Yeah. I can make that joke because clearly I don't have ham hands. They're nothing like I could barely pick up a ham.
They're more like piglet hands.
Oh, I do have kind of like pink. Like my hands are always a little pink.
I just meant because they're just so little.
Just whittle.
Just a little piglet.
Just little piglet hands. Oh, okay.
Well, let's go.
Yeah,
let's do our thing.
Yeah, go do something different for a little while. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Have a creepy ass day. We'll
see you next Tuesday. Unless you're on the Patreon, because there's a good chance we'll see you sooner.
Probably.
Yeah.
Usually do. We see y'all all the time.